Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll give it just another minute or two before we get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Margot Hale, NCAT's ATRA Program Director, and today's webinar on being an organic inspector is hosted by NCAT's ATRA program and the USDA's Transition to Organic Partnership Program, the Midwest region of the TOPP program, and the Center for Arkansas Farms and Food. As we work to increase organic production in the country, especially in Arkansas, there's a need to increase the workforce that supports organic farmers. This webinar will give a glimpse into what it looks like to be an organic inspector. And we will also be sharing some other resources and training opportunities as well. I hope you all are familiar with NCAT's ATRA program, but if you aren't, here is a real quick introduction. ATRA is a free information service for farmers, ranchers, educators, really anyone involved in agriculture. ATRA is funded through the USDA Rural Development. We are a Farm Bill authorized program and have been in existence since the 1987 Farm Bill. And we develop and disseminate a wide variety of educational materials, publications, podcasts, videos. We have a website that has all of this information on it, newsletters, databases, all sorts of information. We also have about 24 technical specialists on staff who have expertise and experience in all areas of sustainable agriculture, from crops and livestock, soils, marketing, really just about everything. And we are here to provide one-on-one technical assistance. So you can connect with us via our website. You can call us on our 1-800 number if you want to talk to a real live person, or you can email us as well. There's lots of ways to connect with our staff. We also do a wide variety of workshops and trainings, just like this webinar today. So please know that ATRA is here to help you. And we have lots of resources, and we'll be sharing some of those in follow-up communication after this webinar. And like I said, we are just happy you are here, and we'll just dive right in. I'm going to stop my slides for a second. Okay, it's always, hopefully that worked. So I want to see who is here today. I did recognize quite a few names on the registration list, which was great. Good to see friends. But we're going to see who is here. And we're going to do a couple of quick polls before we dive in today's program. Okay. So I just want to get an idea of who's in the room. Another few seconds. Looks like most folks have responded. Okay, so we've got quite a few farmers and ranchers, a few certified organic producers here. Glad to have you here. Some students, educators, agency, and nonprofit staff. So good distribution here. Thanks for sharing. All right, and then one more question. Okay, I know it's the whole reason we're here. Right, we'll go ahead and end this. And it's about half and half as far as, yes, folks are interested in being an organic inspector, and the other half are not really sure, just here to check it out. So we welcome everyone, and hopefully this will give you a little bit of information and point you in the right direction. Throughout this webinar, please, if you have any questions, enter them into the chat. We will have a time for questions at the end, but I'll be monitoring the chat as we have a discussion, and we'll hopefully be able to work in some of your questions into our discussion.
Does it last more than an hour?
No, it lasts an hour. We will be done right at 2 Central. And this is also being recorded, and we will share the recording and follow-up resources with everybody who has registered for this webinar. All right. So sharing with us today are Ann Baier and Rinehart, two longtime NCAT specialists who both have experience as organic inspectors. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and share a little bit about their experiences. And then we're going to have a discussion. I have a few questions prepared for Ann and Lee, and they're going to share about what it looks like to be an organic inspector and share some of their experiences. And as I said, we will have time for questions, and please put any questions you might have in the chat. So, Ann, I am going to turn it over to you to give a brief introduction to yourself.
Thanks, Margot. I'm Ann Baier. I'm a sustainable agriculture specialist with NCAT from California for over 20 years. And I've also been working as an organic inspector since the year 2000, which was 2 years before full implementation of USDA's regulations under the National Organic Program. I see these two part-time jobs as highly complementary parts of working toward the same goal of healthier food and farming systems. So at NCAT, we work with all kinds of farmers and ranchers, provide reliable, practical and scientifically sound information and appropriate technical assistance to help anyone move their production practices and their businesses toward greater health and success, starting from wherever they are, at whatever pace they choose. As an organic inspector, I interact with producers and handlers along a specific segment of that journey, those who have chosen to seek certification to USDA organic regulations. And that's like a recognition of a certain mile marker along a continuum of ecologically based farming systems in order to be able to market products to people who care about how it's produced. So organic certification and verification of compliance for me means being the eyes and ears of the consumer, or in the words of the International Organic Inspectors Association, or IOIA, that I'm a member of, to be sure that organic is really organic. That term is not only a meaningful marketing label, but it's a point along a journey of continuous learning and improvement.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, Lee, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Margot. Yeah, I really appreciate being here. I was honored to for you to ask me to be a part of this. I have 20 years of experience as an ag specialist with NCAT, working on the ATRA program, mostly Arm to Farm, couple of other projects that we have scattered around the country, doing some work in the Southwest right now, with bird habitat on the southern Great Plains. So really happy to be doing that kind of work. This has been a very fulfilling 20 years so far, working with producers, ranchers and farmers and educators all over the country. You know, kind of like what Ann was saying, you know, making organic, just kind of showing, you know, trying to build the integrity of the organic system, but just really trying to build the integrity of the sustainable farming all around. It's clear that we need a transition to a better farming system, and I've been really pleased to be a very small part of that. I spent about 4 years with Pennsylvania Certified Organic, now called PCO, as an inspector, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the conversation. But right now with NCAT, I'm using my knowledge of organic systems to kind of help farmers with organic soil management, hayfield management, pasture, and ruminant livestock. So good to see all you guys here.
Yeah, thank you both. I am thrilled, Lee, that you and Anne agreed to participate in this webinar and share your experiences. So I've had the privilege of working with both of them for around 20 years. So we've worked together for a really long time. Okay, so now we're to our discussion where I have some questions so that we can see what it looks like to be an organic inspector and what role that plays in this system that Anne and Lee just talked about. So Anne and Lee, I'll let you guys decide who goes first. But would you please share with how you got started with organic inspecting? And Anne, since you just shared that you started inspecting before the National Organic Program rules were finalized, share a little bit about that. That's some really rich history there.
It is. It's been a really interesting journey to see how the whole movement has evolved from, I would say, from movement to industry, and still those two very much intertwined. And making it more uniform and more consistent. Why I got started as an organic inspector was because of my professional interest in a healthier food system. But personally, I wanted a job that would help me move to where I live with my partner, where my partner was established. And I wanted a work that would allow me to plan my schedule with some flexibility so I could spend as much time as I could with my children. So this work has also allowed me to continue to work, thankfully, flexibly with NCAT, work that I also love. So how I got started was to respond to the need of the certifier that works in my area. They needed a bilingual inspector, which I am. I speak Spanish and work with a lot of Spanish-speaking farmers. And then to take the basic crop and livestock inspector training with IOIA, or the International Organic Inspectors Association. And at one point I thought, well, I would like to do this more full time. And I took the handler inspector training as well. And I do less of that now, but it's really a useful thing to be able to, if there's an operation that has crop, livestock, and handling, I can do any combination of those.
What do you mean by handling?
Handling is it's a term that is defined in the USDA regulations. It's anything from post-harvest handling, like washing vegetables or packing, and all the way through really complex, like making ice cream or soup or anything. So it encompasses both post-harvest handling and processing. Lee?
Thanks,
Yeah.
Anne. Yeah, pass it to Lee.
So how did I get started? Yeah, so my experience, very different from Anne's. I was working as a full-time employee for PCO at the time, and I was the director of education. And so my experience in inspecting is kind of an example of how to integrate inspecting into another job and to make it fit. So I inspected as an employee of PCO, and basically conducted these inspections up in Pennsylvania, so that I could really better understand the needs and the perspectives and the challenges and such of specifically organic dairy farmers, as in my role as an ag educator, right? Now, I was an agricultural educator, and when I went onto the farm as an inspector, I had to remove that hat. And we'll probably talk more about that as the webinar goes on, but I was not really allowed, according to the organic regulations, to give any advice or any consulting. I was there to inspect, to ensure that they met the requirements of the regulations. That's the whole point that you're there, right? So basically, that's what I would do. I really wanted to inform myself, is like, okay, what's going on in these organic dairy farms, and how can I glean from the inspection process what they might be needing, so that I could be a more effective educator whenever I took that hat on and put the other one on, right? So one thing that came out of that is I did use my knowledge of the organic regulations and doing inspections to provide mock inspections for farmers who were considering transition, right? That's one of the things that I found really helpful, was to go on the farm with somebody and spend a couple of hours and just do a mock inspection. Really helped to demystify that for them. So that's kind of how I got started in my process of why I wanted to become an inspector.
Thank you both. And yeah, these roles as educators and inspectors, I've seen you both use that knowledge and experience and all of the time you spent on organic farms and use that in your work here at NCAT. So very complimentary. Okay, so you're an organic inspector. You're working with an agency. You show up. You get assigned your first farm to go and inspect. Walk us through what an organic inspection is, or what it looks like, what you are doing when you are there on the farm.
You go first, Anne.
Okay, so it covers a wide range of just verifying compliance with the organic regulations. Some people ask, well, how long does it take? The length of an inspection varies with the type and the complexity of the operation. So it could range from as little as maybe 2 hours for an all organic operation with one production site and well-organized record keeping. And it could be all day or even over a span of days with an operation that's more complex, some that include more than one scope. So scope means either crops, livestock, or handling, or post-harvest handling. And another layer of complexity that you sometimes come across is an operation that is split, meaning that they have both certified organic production and non-organic production. So it takes time to verify both the physical layout and the documentation of measures in the case of, and all kinds of operations, but in the case of split operations, it requires a little extra time to verify the physical layout and the documentation of the measures to prevent contamination and ensure that there's no commingling between organic and non-organic product. Sometimes things take time just because there are multiple parcels and it's spread out over a wide geographic area, such as I did a grass-fed beef operation recently that was expansive over mountainous parcels that they manage to make sure that their herd has enough forage throughout the seasons. So what I cover, I know that there are certain things I need to cover in an inspection, but I have a lot of flexibility when I'm on site about how I approach it, as long as I cover what the USDA regulations require. And of course, the certifier that I'm working for. For example, some of those requirements are to start with an opening interview to establish like what's the scope of the inspection, make sure we have enough time. We have access to the people who are knowledgeable about what's going on the farm and the places and the record keeping. And then ending with an exit interview to review observations and any issues or additional information that's needed. So that's kind of the basic stuff that needs to happen. And I know some inspectors may start at the beginning of their checklist and follow it in order. And there are many right ways to conduct an inspection. When I'm on a farm or a ranch or a processing facility, my general preference is to visit the real or tangible parts of the operation first, then follow with the paperwork, and finally asking questions that tend to feel more prying or sensitive. For example, the certifier I work with requires that we ask about gross organic production value. How much do you sell in a year? And it's an important question, but it's not one you want to start out with first thing. So my approach is more like a dance. So some people I've inspected are nervous at first, and for some it's really old hat. But either way, I try to establish some kind of human connection, something not too personal, but just alive enough to create a sense of ease that sets the tone and allows for more effective communication. So, as when the fire alarm goes off, Lee, why don't you take it from here and I'll move to a location.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, great. So, yeah, get to my notes. Yeah, walking through an organic inspection, you know, it's like Ann was saying, there's an awful lot that you're responsible for from your certifying agency as well as from the National Organic Program in order to make sure that it gets done. But it's basically up to you how that does get done. There's so many aspects to look at, and probably more than we would be able to cover in this hour. So I want to make sure that we do answer, you know, all the questions that you have. Feel free to put some in the chat if you have questions, but you know, I'll try to cover as much as far as from my experience what a day looks like on the organic farm whenever I go out to inspect. So in my experience, I've always looked at organic dairy farms. Most of them on average are around 40 cows. And for a 40 cow dairy, an inspection would probably last me about 4 to 4.5 hours. 3.5 if the farmer was really up on it and had all of their records together and really was responsive and made it easy, right? But that's honestly, that seldom happens. I've had records come out in boxes and I have to dig through receipts and materials lists and bills of lading and all types of things, and that just slows down the process, right? So you have to be ready for just about anything when you get out there. Whenever I first go on the farm, the first thing that I like to do is talk about their organic system plan and their farm description and just get an overall sense of what their farm's about. And we'll walk the farm first. Ann mentioned that what she likes to do is see the big picture things first, some specific things, and then go into the paperwork. I think that's the best way to do it too, because you get a broad perspective of what's going on the farm. So I'll walk the farm with the farmer. The farmer is with me the whole time during that first half of the inspection, walking the farm. I usually have a checklist that I've adapted from the OSP. I've got their maps, I've got their field histories, things like this, and I'm going to be walking around and having a conversation with the farmer. Looking at things like buffers. Things that are really important to me that I pick out are things like buffers. Making sure that those buffers between fields, especially between a conventional field are appropriate, right? I'm going to be looking at the practices the farmer has on ground to improve soil and water and biodiversity, right? I'm going to be discussing my observations. I'm going to be listening to the farmers' stories because they've got a lot to share too. And I'm going to be getting clarity on what I see. I'm going to pay particular attention to things like crop rotations and cover crops and what soil amendments are being placed on there. I'm going to be looking at the pastures for like grazing residue height. I want to see evidence of livestock rotations, fencing, evidence that they're adhering to the pasture rule, 30% DMI for no less than 120 days, right? That's why I'm there. I'm looking and I'm getting this picture and kind of applying it to my knowledge of the organic program rules. And, you know, you've got the organic system plan, which everything is there and you can follow that, right? That's a great checklist to go through. While you're on the farm and you're walking around, you're looking for treated wood, things like that. I want to know their monitoring plans for how they're taking care of their soil health management plan. Pest control measures, equipment, crop storage, looking for evidence of commingling between products that are organic certified and not. There's so much, right? Not to mention things like, you know, livestock living conditions, you know, and their health, gut fill, thriftiness, discussing their health care, right? Also, while I'm out there and I go into the barn, I'm going to go right to the medicine cabinet and I'm going to open up that cabinet and I'm going to write down everything that's in there and I'm going to check that against their materials list. So that's just some of the things that I do whenever I first go onto the farm, and I'm trying to get a picture of what's going on the farm. And most of the time, whenever I walk the farms, this is an opportunity for the farmer to just talk. And sometimes you have a farmer who is really engaged and just really wants to share and is proud of what they're doing, right? And they're really, and it really can be an enlightening and a pleasant experience. Not so much whenever you have to drag information out, you know. So hopefully you have a good farmer who can you can get some clarity on some of those practices.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, I think there's, as professionals, we have a job to do, but there's nothing in the regulation that says we can't be friendly and conversant along the way. And so similar to Lee's experience, for a farm inspection, I would walk the fields, check the borders, and the neighboring land uses, any particular risks, and the vegetation around the field borders. I'd take in how the plants and the soils look, what type of irrigation is used, where that comes from, any areas of concern with respect to erosion, like buildup of salts or evidence of fertilizer materials, either those that are allowed or those, anything that appears not to belong in an organic system. Yes, I have occasionally observed prohibited synthetic fertilizers on the ground. So that's, yeah. So I go into greenhouses or hardening off areas, review the wash station and packing areas, any use of sanitizers, also look in the coolers and equipment. Of course, if there's a split operation, I'm looking for different things than if it's an all organic operation. So like Lee, you know, look in the medicine cabinet, I see what materials are on hand in the storage room and make sure that they match what's listed on the client's organic system plan or OSP. So throughout all this, I'm just talking with the farmer or rancher and asking them both open-ended questions and more specific questions. I really like open-ended questions because that they like, you know, how does the weather impact you? Or what kinds of pest problems are you finding most challenging? Or how are you building soil health? What are your main fertilizer materials? And then more specifically, like, how do you deal with lygus bugs or verticillium or whatever pest or disease is really common to the crop that I'm looking at in that region? And then how do you work to prevent them from becoming an economic issue? If I'm seeing they're using micronutrients, I need to ask, you know, whether that falls within the restriction. Like, how do you know you need to apply micronutrients? Do you do soil tests or tissue tests? And I might not look at them right in the moment, but then I make a note to, when we're looking at the paperwork, to look at those tests and make sure that the micronutrients they're applying are actually deficient. So, and sometimes, there are questions about, do you ever note safety issues or other things? Yeah, so there's always something that comes up that's not directly related to verification of compliance. It could be as simple as, wow, those artichokes look really delicious, just to kind of keep the conversation going. Or I understand diabrotica is a really tough pest to manage. Or I'm noticing the bumblebees or the pollinators and the flowers you've planted at the ends of the rows. But it could also be a safety issue. And I just try to separate, like, okay, this is not part of the organic inspection, but I am noticing this. Or are you concerned about that? Or I've heard of other farms who have had issues with So it's really important to keep straight what has to do with USDA organic compliance and what are just more general parts of conversation and concerns. So Lee mentioned, with livestock operations, observing the animals, how they look, how they sound, how they behave, how does the place smell? And then new regulations for poultry now require monitoring of air quality. So those are keeping current with the regulations is an interesting part of the job, because they are updated, and we do need to keep current with that. And then, of course, sitting down to do the paperwork, which is not necessarily any of our favorite parts of the job, but it's really important to make sure that you can trace a product from the seed and where it's grown as the annual start and the transplant, and through to where it's sold to the final consumer, and that everything says it's organic along the way, and that's the right amount. And you do production verification audits to make sure that the amount that's being sold as organic is realistic for the operation. So yeah, just looking through all those records, and the flow that works well for me and for most clients is to go through the organic system plan, and then as we go, review the records that are relevant to each section. For example, we're going through the OSP section that addresses seeds and planting stock. And then I'm saying, okay, well, show me the purchase receipts for those. And then I'm looking at those purchase records and noticing, okay, what proportion of these are certified organic versus untreated? And how are they determining that organic seed was not commercially available if they bought that? Or are any seed coatings used? And then I'm checking these, is everything that they're using on their materials list and approved for their certifier for their own use? And then we're looking at planting records and crop rotation and all those other aspects of all the different parts of organic crop or livestock production, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and before I kind of continue, there's a couple of questions on the chat that I wanted to cover. One of them was about, do I ever work with a buddy, 2 people driving out instead of you, salary payment? The only time that ever happened with me was whenever I was training, because you'll get your certification through IOIA or some other certifying agency that's going to certify you, and then the certifier is going to want to know that you're competent. And so PCO had me go out with another inspector for probably 3 or 4 times until that inspector felt good that I could go out there alone. And then otherwise I just went out alone, right? I don't Anne, have you ever gone out with a buddy?
Not necessarily as a co-inspector, but there are circumstances in which there might. I really like it when the certifier sends somebody from the office to shadow me, because I think it's such a great exchange of me understanding what's going on in the office and what the challenges and bumps are that they face there, and to see them as human beings, not just this dry other. So that's one instance as an observer. Another is when I've got my field evaluation, like every couple of years, I think it is, somebody from the certifier comes out with me to make sure that I'm doing my job the way they expect me to do my job, that I'm following their procedures and that I'm covering everything that needs to be covered. And then on other occasions, I've had somebody from USDA, a USDA auditor come out. So they're inspecting the certifier and making sure that the certifier is making sure that the inspector is doing the right thing. So I really appreciate all of these opportunities, all of these interactions and layers, because I always learn something. And in one instance was really encouraging to me, that I was on this USDA auditor, and we were just between parcels and talking along the way. And I was saying, in most instances, I really found that people believe in organic and they want to follow it. And there's really small things, but yes, there was this circumstance in which I found this non-compliance where this operation wasn't allowing their chickens access to the outdoors. And I described the situation, and I used the phrase that I'd used in my inspection report, pointing out this non-compliance. And she said, "Oh, I reviewed that situation." Neither of us had to say who it was or who the certifier was, but I was really encouraged to see these layers of verification made it such that my report, where I pointed out the non-compliance, and then the certifier needed to follow up on that, and then the USDA person just happened to pull that file to audit. So these are really important layers of making sure that organic really is organic. And I appreciate being evaluated, and I appreciate that this continuous learning, because I think that makes the whole system better. It's discouraging to find a non-compliance, but that's probably the most important thing we do, is to find when it's not working and make sure that there can be trust in this system.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, and so my next question, and you mentioned your report. So after you have done your inspection, you've made all your observations, you've interviewed the farmers, and they've answered all your questions and provided all their records to you. So then what? Then what do you do? And you mentioned when you identify noncompliance, and it's not your job as the inspector to, necessarily confront the farmer, but then what's next?
Yeah. So it is not my job to make a compliance decision, but it is my job to tell the client, the producer or handler, what I'm observing, and to refer to the regulation and say, so this is what the regulation says. This is what I'm seeing. This doesn't appear to be compliant. I'm writing it on the exit interview. Then this goes in with my report to the certifier. So then I go home with my notes and I write the report. And, I think that's another important part of this, like being an inspector, is it does require being relatively agile with technology and using whatever programs and checklists and procedures are required by the certifier. And each one has their own templates and inspection report forms and billing and expense procedures. And also in terms of just notes, different inspectors work in really different ways. I'm not super techie. I'm techie enough to get my reports in. Some people feel much more comfortable using their computer or technology on site. I use a very simple PDF editor where I can use my finger to mark up maps or the organic system plan. But mostly I prefer to take written notes, just because that's what works for me in a bumpy car and not getting seasick along the way, and then complete the checklist afterwards. It's helpful, as Lee mentioned, to have an outline to make sure I'm not forgetting critical questions when I'm on site. And one of the other questions in the chat was about, reviewing the organic system plan ahead of time. Yes, it's really helpful to review the organic system plan, review the examples of record keeping in that, and the list of previous non-compliances or action items that the person had. And sometimes action items mean that somebody needs to provide a certain type of record at the next inspection. And so I try to have that conversation with the person ahead of time, just so they're ready, so they know what to expect, because this is a letter they've gotten, but they might not have reviewed recently, and just to have a reminder so that everything goes as smoothly as it can.
Thanks. Lee, do you have anything to add about your experience, after the inspection and preparing your reports and what that looks like?
Yeah, that's the most daunting part for me, because that's where, like Ann was saying, you're the eyes of the certifying agency, and you want to make sure that you're getting it right and you're doing due diligence, right? And you're reporting just the facts that you've seen on the ground. So after I have walked the farm with the farmer and I've looked at all of these areas, then while I'm there on the farm, I find a place to write, and I'll spend a couple of hours, usually at a desk in the house. Maybe they have an office or a barn with a desk or something, just someplace comfortable where I can write and have access to their records, right? And access to the farmer whenever I have questions, right? Because you're going to be there for a while doing things like verifying crop rotations, the pasture rule. Ann mentioned like audits. Those are very important, especially like in dairy farms. A feed audit is very important. So you'll need to take all of the either if they grow their own organic corn, you need to have harvest records for that, so that you can match up the tonnage that was produced with the nutrient demands of the animals and how many animals there are. And you got to be able to do that math so that you can say, okay, there's enough organic feed on this farm to feed this many cows, right? And if they're buying feed and hay off-site, you'll need to see purchase records and organic certificates to prove that it was organic. And again, do that feed audit to make sure that the feed in matches the animals. Remember, the audit is looking at completely from the time that materials come onto the farm to the time they leave the farm in animal products. All materials have to be accounted for, and that it was all of an organic origin and organic certified. So that's whenever I really need to have some time in a quiet place to do that, to look at the health records, to match up the materials list with their organic system plan, look at all of their seed lists, their affidavits, and remember that they have to keep records for the past 5 years. So I'm also looking for records going back to at least 5 years there as well. And then after that, like Ann said, we do an exit interview where we basically summarize the information with the farmer, discuss any instances where we've seen something that might be a non-compliance, get any information that's on the organic system plan. And then after that, I leave and I submit that report to the certification specialist with the organic certifier, and then be available to respond to any follow-up questions that they might have. So basically that's what that 4.5 hours of a small dairy farm comprised of for me.
And capturing that in a way that's accurate and factual and concise in the inspection report.
Are you taking pictures and submitting photos?
Go ahead.
I didn't, unless it was like if it was like a questionable non-compliance. If it was something that I figured that it would cover me, right, and then I could explain it to the certifying specialist, well, then I would. I don't know whether or not they kept those as a part of the record, but it was more, I thought of it more as anything is just to explain it to the certifying agent what I saw.
Mhm.
And you didn't take as many pictures, Lee, I think you mentioned, because many of the farms you inspected were Amish.
Oh, about 90% of the farms I was on were Amish, yeah.
In contrast, I'm in California, I take a lot of pictures. I take pictures so that occasionally to know to capture a record, but also to capture like what's in the field. It helps me not, mostly it's to help me as I'm writing my report, to remind me. And as I'm looking at them, I think, okay, so this field has nopales in it. Is nopales listed on the list of crops certified by this operation? Just, it's a double check to make sure that I've got everything. And sometimes it helps illustrate borders and whether a border has any kind of buffer issue, if, you know, is there herbicide? If there's a non-compliance issue like an herbicide, I definitely try to document that. And sometimes they are photos just to support to illustrate how compliance is taking place. Like, do these chickens have enough space? Here's the photo of the pastured poultry that is just amazing, or whatever.
Yeah, great. Okay, I know we're running out of time. Great discussion so far. I'm going to end with one quick question for you before we hear from Luke, our partner Luke, and going to share about a training opportunity. Okay, what's your favorite thing about being an organic inspector? Briefly.
Well, I'll say mine. Mine is walking the fields with a farmer, especially when that farmer is excited and shows pride in the farm. I love to hear the stories. I love to hear him describe and discuss what he does and why he does it and how he came to make his decisions. And that really kind of feeds into the inspection process as well, giving me information on how rotations are being handled and decisions are being made. So it's really great whenever the farmer is really engaged, and I love walking the fields, getting in the truck and driving and doing that stuff.
I'm with you there. I just love being in the field. The people we meet are so interesting. I just love the conversations and seeing really innovative practices. I get to see really beautiful countryside and drive through some, well, beautiful and contrasting environments. Most days it's really quite enjoyable and uplifting. And then the occasional days where I'm dealing with people who are challenging in some way, or circumstances that are awkward, or sleuthing out of a situation of fraud, while sad or discouraging, it really feels like a super important part of the job, and an honor and an accomplishment to be able to contribute to ensuring the integrity and the meaning of the organic certification process. So in a big picture sense, I feel like there's a lot of benefit to society and to consumers and to the ecosystem and the business environment to ensure that consistency and integrity in that certification process. So while organic practices and all the things that we help farmers figure out how to do at NCAT, those benefit all of us, farmers and ranchers and their surrounding communities and watershed. The organic certification, not just the practices, but the certification of those practices, provides, in an ideal world, a trusted recognition of a minimum level of accomplishment of on-the-ground practices, but also transparency through traceable records and production identity. And you know that these products are grown in accordance with the regulations that respond to site-specific conditions, that integrate cycling of nutrients, promote ecological balance, and conserve biodiversity. So I see certification, it's neither the beginning nor the end of this journey, but it's a mile marker along this collective journey of continuous improvement. Along the way, we're learning and trying and figuring out how to do things better.
And you have a wonderful way of making it sound like just the best job ever. I believe you. I believe you.
Yes. It's beautiful. Thank you, Ann and Lee. I'm gonna let Luke share with us for a few minutes. We might have time for a few more questions at the very end. Ann and Lee, feel free. I see you're answering questions in the chat, so thank you. So I'm gonna turn it over for just a few minutes to Luke Freeman. And Luke, I'm gonna share your slides here. Hopefully that worked.
Great. There we go. Thanks, Margot. Hi, everyone. My name is Luke Freeman. I'm with the Center for Arkansas Farms and Food, which is a program of the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture. So we are actually the state leads for the TOPP program, the Transition to Organic Partnership program, which is a program of the USDA AMS. And so we're very fortunate for NCAT to be partners with us on our work here in Arkansas. If you're interested in more of what we're doing with organic farming in Arkansas, you can go to arkansasorganicag.uada.edu there at the bottom next to my contact info. And I'm sure Margot will send that link to you guys as well. We can go to the next slide, Margot. Yeah, so before I share an opportunity for those of you who are actually interested in being trained as organic certifiers, I wanted to talk to you briefly about what CAF is, if you're not familiar. So as I mentioned, we're part of the University of Arkansas Center Division of Ag, and we have a teaching farm at the research station in Fayetteville, where we have an 11-month farmer training program. So if any of you might want to receive training to learn how to be organic farmers yourselves, this is a great opportunity for you. You can learn more at learntofarm.org. For those of you who are already farming and just would like to build your skills, we do offer short courses. And for those of you who maybe have farming experience but need access to land, we do have a farm incubator program where you can have access to a quarter-acre farm plot. You can learn all about that at learntofarm.org. We can go to the next slide, Margot. So more specifically on what we're doing with TOPP to support organic farms in Arkansas, I just had this slide here to show, where our certified organic operations are throughout the state. So when it comes to other states in the U.S., Arkansas has one of the fewest number of certified organic farms. We actually have quite a few certified organic poultry or egg operations, just 19 specialty crop farms, a few certified organic grain farms. And one of the barriers that we've identified, which those of you who are familiar probably realize, is that we don't have a organic certifier within the state of Arkansas. And so we can go to the next slide, Margot. In order to help new certified organic farms, or farms who want to transition to certified organic production, help them be certified, we are actually launching this organic inspector training program, which is curriculum developed by OFA in Ohio. And this training opportunity is funded by the TOPP program, free for those who participate. We do have a limited number of seats. We're targeting close to 8 folks who are interested in being trained to be being working organic inspectors. Though we'll have more seats for those who just want to audit the training to just become more familiar with what it takes to be certified organic. And on this slide, I have a little bit more about the program. So it'll go from August 5th to October 3rd, about 4 hours a week. So this is going to be online, asynchronous, but you'll have weekly assignments that will need to be turned in. There will be 2 on-farm mock inspections in Arkansas, so you'll need to be able to travel to those. The dates of those are TBD. We'll let you know as soon as possible. And then after the end of the training, we are collaborating with other partners in Midwest TOPP to be able to pair trainees with inspector mentors to provide mentorship hours so that at the end of this experience, those, newly trained inspectors will be able to apply for work with certifying agencies. So if you're interested in this, you can, scan the QR code here on the screen, click the link. I'm sure Margot will send this out. We are currently reviewing applications and we'll be making decisions here at the end of July. I think July, let's see, when do I have as the deadline? Yes, July 17th is the deadline to apply. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. So if you're interested, definitely click the link, apply. And I'd be happy to take any questions here, or you can email me for more information.
Yes, sir. I had the question in the chat. I was asking, I was interested in the program, but I didn't know if I should apply or not because on October the 3rd, I will be out of state. So I didn't know how this would affect anything if I was to get accepted for the program. I'll be out of town the October the 1st through the 3rd.
Yeah, that should be fine. The on-farm days will be in either August or September. So that should not be a problem.
Okay.
Thank you, Luke. And yes, I will be sharing all the links Luke shared, several of the links that have happened in the chat, and make sure I put Anne and Lee's email addresses in the chat, but we'll also follow up. All of this information along with the webinar recording will be sent to you most likely tomorrow, maybe Friday. So it won't happen today. Don't expect it today, but in the next couple of days, we'll get all of these resources shared with you all.
Margot, I also wanted to
Yes.
add, I know this is a great opportunity, this training, and I also dropped in the chat the website for IOIA. So just encourage people to consider becoming members of that app once you get your training and start working, because it's a really wonderful community of people who are super knowledgeable. And the forum, the listserv, is very active and really helps inspectors as we go along doing this very unique and interesting job.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Anne, and we'll make sure and include that link as well. Thank you all so much for joining us today to see what it might look like to be an organic inspector, and hopefully some of you will be able to take part in the organic inspector training that Luke has offered here. And just so as we close here, I have a few evaluation questions for this webinar. Once you've completed these questions, you're free to leave. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will be following up with the resources. And I should mention there are 5 questions in this poll, so you might have to scroll down to see all of them.
Did you say leave afterwards?
Yes, you're free to leave. Thank you.
It's like really quiet. I was like, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you, and feel free to get in touch. I'm happy to talk to anybody if you want to discuss the
And
possibility.
are you in Ohio or California now?
I am in California.
Okay.
So it's really helpful to have inspectors who are all over the country. Really important to have local inspectors who understand the region. So I applaud this effort and really want to encourage you all to consider it. And it's a rewarding both personally, but also really important for the food system to have good local inspectors.
Is there anything parallel that's just not organic?
That's a big question.
I know. I guess, yeah. I guess I'm curious of the broader range that this all fits into.
Yeah, feel free to call. But I think one thing I really value the USDA organic because it has like decades of a process of evolution where people developed the standards, thought about what was an important part, what were the important parts of a healthier food system. They developed standards based on those concepts, those principles. Then they worked really hard with lawmakers so that those would become standards first in the state and then at the national level that would be consistent. So when I started inspecting, there were several different sets of standards that were largely overlapping, but I really think that for all its challenges and flaws and growing pains, having a unified standard through the USDA program is a really important part of establishing a procedure and recognized standards for an ecological approach to agriculture. Yes, there are many variations and there are many add-ons and other ways to look at different kinds of certification. And I think that USDA organic is a really important core part of that.
I'm full of questions, but I'll just you.
Feel free to shoot me an email and we can set a time to call if you want.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anne and Lee, so much, and Luke, for this opportunity. And we'll sign off now and see you all later.
Thank you.
Thanks.